Hear that?
Hi, my friends. Hello, friendships. Welcome to another episode of The Salt Circle. As you know, I'm Daniela. I'm going to be your host for today's episode. And today we are going to navigate, like every Wednesday, death, dying, and bereavement. It's a universal odyssey that is going to touch all of us, maybe most likely more than once, in many different ways, whether as a witness, a caretaker, a mourner, or the person who is experiencing their own mortality firsthand. So today, I really want us to look at the psychological and social impacts and explore into, you know, our culture in America and other cultures around the world. Sorry, my dogs are farting really badly and it's distracting because it's stinging my nose. Um, so we're going to look at the perspectives from all different religions and cultures from all over the world, past and present. And we're also going to exercise our own empathy, especially for what we might expect for others or ourselves when it's time for us to experience our own mortality. Um, especially I want to stress in this space, the Salt Circle, this is a supportive space. We're going to really try to navigate some of life's most challenging transitions with openness and compassion, and especially when it comes to dealing with some of these transitions or complexities that are marred with dysfunction, addiction, cultural barriers, ethical dilemmas, everything woven together. I really want to take a look at that. So we have to go into it non-judgmentally, and we can't really go into it, with our own feelings of shame for ourselves, especially. So, every Wednesday, tune in. We're going to practice and come together and really dive into death, dying, and bereavement. And like I said, it's going to touch us all in one way or another. So I definitely want to encourage people to share their experiences, share their journey, especially if you're going through it, or if you know someone who went through it, or even if you just have questions, or even if you don't fucking like what I'm talking about. Everyone's welcome to chime in and discuss what they feel, right? So today's episode, today I really wanted to talk about something that actually when I first started this channel, when I first started the podcast, the support group, whatever you want to call it, was about ceremony and the importance of ceremony. How not having a ceremony or distinct rituals is pretty detrimental to your mental health. Um, you know, having a ceremony in whatever way, shape, or form has been a timeless tradition. It has transcended every language, every culture, every global catastrophe. Humans across the world, even animals, have been observed to mourn and create burials and, feel grief. So it's really interesting how ceremonies or funerals or, whatever you do when someone dies, it's really interesting that it's not only important for the person who has passed away, but it's really important for the people that remain, for the people that are, still living, it offers so much to them, not just from a psychological standpoint, but from like a sociological standpoint. And it helps us to kind of get over, or at least it helps us kickstart that grief period, I think. So sorry if I seem like I'm all over the place. It's because I'm, experiencing my own themes and feelings of grief and bereavement for my grandparents. We'll get into that later. So this is a very, very sensitive topic for me, but I feel like it's important to talk about. So let's just get into it. But first, I want to see if anyone has any, questions, if anyone has any comments. It doesn't look like it. All right, cool. So let's get into it. So, ceremony, right, in the context of death and mourning, holds profound significance across cultures and religions worldwide. These rituals and practices not only honor the deceased, but also serve crucial psychological functions for the living, aiding in coping and grief and finding meaning in loss. So, firstly, ceremonies provide a structured framework for acknowledging and honoring the deceased, whether it's elaborate funerals like we have in America, or it's serene cremation ceremonies of Hinduism. These rituals offer a communal space to bid farewell and express grief and celebrate the person who lived. By publicly commemorating the deceased, ceremonies also reaffirm their significance in the lives of those who were left behind. It's fostering a sense of continuity and connection with the past. So by sharing it with who, and it would be nice if community meant your neighborhood, your city, the people in your community that your taxes affect. But community can be your family, your partner and your friends, what community can be your close dynamic. Because that always would, I don't know, that always bums me out. Like, anyway, ceremonies serve essential psychological functions for the living, right? Like I said, regardless of cultural specifics, ceremonies offer profound psychological benefits to people who are mourning. A ceremony, no matter what it is, it's really going to provide not just structure of something that is out of our fucking hands, right? It's going to acknowledge and help us accept the loss. A funeral is a very real thing. You can't deny or have trouble accepting someone is dead. And I think that's why it's really important to use terms, especially when it comes with, to children. And I'll get into that in another episode, but to really use, the words death or dying or died. And we say, people have died. And I think saying, they've passed on or they've departed, I think it just, it accidentally misaligns the severity and importance of what has happened. Ceremonies are going to facilitate a sense of closure, and that can happen in so many ways. But it's really going to, I feel like being validated and being seen starts the healing process, and that can be applied to so many different areas of, self healing or shadow work. It's a ceremony, like a funeral, whatever kind of ceremony it is. It's like a sanctioned place to express, to deal with the grief and to handle those questions, to get together with maybe long lost family members or express grievances, get over certain situations in the interpersonal dynamics, or, it can assign meaning in so many ways. Also, ceremonies can kind of serve as a milestone for when someone's identity has changed. If your husband died, you are now a widow, or you are now someone who is single. Your identity as a married person has fundamentally and socially changed. And, there's I think, a lot of complexity to American culture for one thought bubble that we don't really think about. But just like any other culture, there's so much that goes into it. There's so many unspoken layers, and a ceremony really kind of acknowledges what's happening. And even if it's uncomfortable, I think we owe it not just to the dead, but to ourselves to have this sanctioned time to go through this emotion, or these sets of emotions, or this experience, right? It's a tangible way to cope. And coping is never easy for anyone. There's so many different ways that people can cope, and people can cope really negatively sometimes. And I think especially when you're seen to need to repress your emotions or not ask questions. Engaging in rituals provide, like I said, a sense of control and predictability during a time of fucking upheaval, and, not just emotionally, but so many different ways. So many structures change forever, right? A lot of people feel helpless too when someone dies. I think people forget that death is not just something that everyone will experience, but it's not something that we can protect ourselves against flawlessly. So, it really is, your time could be any time. And I think that is often a fact that is very uncomfortable for people to sit with, especially when people have children, that it's ignored. So it's because that uncertainty, right? So I think, maybe expressing grief or having, specific ceremonies to your family or to your group dynamic, I think it helps with the preparation of that mortality, or the realization of the finality. I think there's some research psychology that, underscore the therapeutic benefits of the grieving process. But we all know that grieving is healthy and necessary. It's just, how the fuck do we grieve, and how do we do that when, our family is dysfunctional, or when we're an only child and we don't know how to, mourn the death of both of our parents. Like, whatever, they died suddenly in an accident. They were young, it wasn't supposed to happen, or, um, but sorry, I'm losing such track. I have papers, and I have notes, and I have spreadsheets, and it just all seems like hieroglyphics right now, because how do you express how important it is to have that gravestone, or to have that farewell party where you meet all of the relatives, and you have a place or a date or a time, you a thoughtfully written obituary. You don't even receive a phone call from anyone. Is it? I don't know. But it's funny too, because when the person who is dying, if they don't want anyone to know, it's not your place to tell anyone, right? But I think a ceremony, if I need to just create one just for myself, and that's also why I decided that episode would be really important, but now that I'm getting into it, I'm realizing that this might have to be chopped up into several episodes. So stay tuned. We'll see how far we get into it. But, my God, these dog farts. Oh, puppies. Why you got tummy ache? So let's just take a quick break, actually. And we're gonna see if anyone has any comments or anything. Nope. No commentes. I think I might just need to do this another day, and that's okay. I want to go eat mashed potatoes.